Is the God of the Bible pro-life? Well, apparently not always. So, everybody, I'm going to read a passage from the Bible, but do not try this at home, please. At Numbers 5:27, if she has made herself impure and has been unfaithful to her husband, this will be the result. When she is made to drink the water that brings a curse and causes bitter suffering, it will enter her. Her abdomen will swell and her womb will miscarry, and she will become a curse. That doesn't sound very pro-life, does it? And in fact, the God of the Bible is not only not as pro-life as we thought, but he actually condones termination of pregnancy in these circumstances and encourages it and demands it. Did he just not know to tell people to take a paternity test or find out, who the father is? Did humans just outsmart God? If God cares so much about these unborn babies, why would he allow abortions in any circumstances and also demand people do them? Why are so many abortions involuntary? Why do you think God opposes abortion? If so, call us because the show's starting now. Welcome, everyone. Today is December 10th, 2023. I'm your host, Dr. Ben, and joining me today is a very special guest, Sydney Davis Jr. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Dr. Ben? What's new?
It's been a while since I've been on, and I'm very, very excited today. I know we saw you not too long ago on Truth Wanted. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct. And then I saw you on a different live stream just yesterday, just hours ago.
Yeah, so we're just moving around. But this is your first time joining me on an ACA show, and I'm very, very excited for you to be here. So everybody should get your calls in today because Sydney is a great person to talk with.
Yay! Thank
Um,
you. I'm stoked to be here.
yeah. And for everybody who is new here or doesn't know, Talk Heathen is a product of the atheist community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. This is also a live call-in show, and we have open lines, so please get your calls in at 512-991-9242, or you can go to your computer and type in tiny.cc/callth. And today, especially, I want to talk about a couple topics. So if you want to tell me why you are pro-life, or you want to tell us why men are inherently better leaders of the family or of the church or of society, we want to take your calls. Or even if you have a story from a fundamentalist church that was really out there and unexpected, we also want to hear about that too. Because Sydney here loves to talk about religious fundamentalism,
I
and we'd love to
do.
engage with you.
I do. If you're a former fundy, an ex-fundy, a former evangelical, an ex-evangelical, I'd love to hear from you. Call in. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so Sydney, what is it that you do?
So I am the host of a podcast called Growing Up Fundy. You can find it here on YouTube, on all of the different audio platforms. And then I also am a stand-up comedian. I've been doing stand-up for 16 years this year, and I'm almost done with grad school, getting my MFA in creative nonfiction. So a little bit of everything: storytelling, stand-up, podcast hosting. Love talking to people and hearing about their experiences.
That's awesome. So everybody should check out Sydney's channel and more from her, because she does some great stuff for the community and is incredibly entertaining with her comedy. So highly recommend.
Thank you.
And speaking of comedy, we have our next segment, which is the question of the week. So our audience gets to tell us responses to questions that we send out the week before. And last week, we asked you to make a new holiday ritual that people should adopt. And in third place, we have, oh, I have to read this name, Miranda Rensberger 6919. Nice. Says, new holiday tradition that I wish everyone would adopt: respecting the wishes of people who just want to be left alone.
Hey.
Honestly, I don't know why this isn't number one, because
Right.
this is absolutely my favorite answer out of
Right.
all
I'm
of them.
curious what number one is going to be now.
Number two is John Doe Lee9FQ says a new holiday ritual we should adopt is scrawling random symbols onto tarot cards, Pokemon cards, Magic the Gathering cards, really anything, and mailing them to Greg Locke. Also a fabulous answer. And in number one, we have from XMillion1704 says, new atheist holiday tradition, serving a tofu loaf shaped like baby Jesus with beet juice blood gravy on a bed of straw to look like noodles. That is pretty great as well. I love the creativity from
The
our
imagery
audience.
is quite visceral with that one.
What are your thoughts on all of these responses?
The first one, totally here for. The second one is probably a crime. So I'm just assuming for your it's probably a crime. And the third one is gonna end up on Reddit for sure. Whether that's good or bad, we'll find out. But that pictures of that one will definitely go viral, I can imagine.
Yeah, amazing answers for this week. And we do have a new question for next week. So if you want to be featured on the show in one of the top 3 choices, you can go to the comment section, very distinct from the side chat. It's not the side chat. You have to go into the comment section below the video after the live show and type in your answer to this next question, which is, we know that God is not pro-life because ... So if you want to be featured, put your answers in the comments and we will pick our top 3. But first, I want to know from our guest today, how do you know that God is not pro-life?
I have a list, and the list comes from the Bible. So it's real. So it's fact. And I also found a list online that tells you scenarios in which people were either killed by God or demanded to be killed by God, and the estimated number based on either what was said in the Bible or what was inferred in the Bible. For example, the flood of Noah, 20 million people are estimated to have died in the flood of Noah. And that's in Genesis 7:23. Then we have, I'm going to skip down to Sodom and Gomorrah. 2,000 people are estimated to have died. That's Genesis 19:24. Then we have the firstborn Egyptian children in Exodus 12:29 through 30. That's 500,000 babies were demanded to be killed by God. I wanted to emphasize babies because I feel like that's going to come up a lot today, is that God does not support the death of babies. There's very specifically babies, firstborn children, and it was boys. And then, God burns 250 people to death for burning incense in Numbers 16:49, 14,700 people estimated to have died. God slowly killed the Israelite army in Deuteronomy, 500,000 people. I can keep going, but there's a lot. There's a lot of people, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people, as I look down this list, were either demanded killed by God or killed by God himself. So that tells me that God is not pro-life. God is more pro-victory in his mind.
I just had a thought, and maybe I need to do some math off air, but like in medicine, we have like the statistic called the number needed to treat, where you calculate how many people need to receive a certain treatment in order to like see benefit from treating the disease in one person. Like how many times you have to give the medication for one person to have benefit. So I kind of wonder, like, also on the flip side, there's like a number like needed to harm it and stuff. So like looking at this, like how many people did God have to kill in order to save one? Like, and we could calculate out that statistic, and it might be very interesting to see what that comes out to.
It would be alarming. Whatever the final count would be, it would be probably very alarming. It probably would. I'm going to be honest. It probably wouldn't be worth it. Probably wouldn't be worth it. It'd probably be a lot. But I'm just guessing.
But I will calculate this, and I'll get back to you, the audience, about what we find out the next time that I'm on. But if you have a response to this question, or if you want to comment on any of the responses that Sydney had, please put them in the comments below, and we will pick our top 3 for next week. And speaking of people that I love to talk about on this show, as much as I love to talk about myself and talk about our guests, there are some people working behind the scenes, working very hard, that we need to shout out today. And let's go to the crew cam. We have lovely faces behind the scenes working very hard. We got a lot of We got a guitar back there. I don't see the cat today, but I know Crew Cat is somewhere back there doing a good job as well. So thank you to the crew. You're doing an amazing job, and we would not be able to do any of this without them. I promise my audio and visual skills are yikes compared to the magic that these people do for us every week.
Yikes on bikes, one might
Indeed.
say. Indeed.
Indeed. And it looks like we have some callers on the line. We still have some open lines if people want to get in to talk about anything. We're here to talk about, we can talk about creationism, we can talk about God, we can talk about abortion, we can talk about gender roles, all these kinds of things. If
Right.
you have an opinion, we want to hear it and we
This
want to
is
talk to you.
the one place people will be asking for your opinions on these things and asking you to call and talk about them.
And with that being said, we have a caller, Steve from California, wants to talk about Jesus and salvation. Steve, you are on the line with two atheists. What would you like to talk about?
You guys is excuse me, I'm a little sick. Do you guys understand what salvation is?
Yeah,
I understand the concept.
Yeah.
I think so. We were both
saved?
raised evangelical Christian. So just for some background for you, we grew up with a lot of education on the Bible and at least what we believe salvation was. May I ask what denomination you come from?
Yeah, I'm a Christian, a born again Christian.
Okay. Would you like to tell us what you mean by salvation?
Yeah, I believe the Bible in you guys read Genesis, right? How God created man and woman, and how man sinned against God. So, He gave us the choice, and man made the choice. And now,
I apologize to interrupt you, but it sounds like the audio is a little bit muffled. Can we make sure, are you on a phone or on a headset?
Yeah, I'm on a phone, and it's not on.
Okay, that sounds better right
Much
there.
better, yeah.
Okay, we can understand a bit better.
Okay.
Yeah, so according to the Bible, like, what is your specific perspective on salvation? Why do we need salvation at all?
Well, because when God created us, He gave us a choice, and He tested us because He created us. So man and woman, they didn't listen to what He said. So you know how He said, "You will surely die." So now we have to die because of man's choice, and so that's the reason why we are put to death. And that's the Bible says the wages of sin is death, because we sinned against God, and He created a sacrifice for us. That doesn't have to be that way. Yeah, that's why that's why Jesus came for redemption.
Do you just out of curiosity, because when I was growing up, I grew up in the Baptist church, and from our understanding, it was believed that human beings were basically the original sin was kind of what we were making up for, and since the original sin, we were all born sinners. We were all born needing to be redeemed. Do you believe that it's fair for us to have to pay for the sins of people that existed long before us, and to have to be considered sinners based on the original sin, something we weren't even here for, and then to risk going to hell anyway, even though we weren't here to cause those sins or to do those sins? Or do you believe something different than that?
Yeah, we are now, since Adam and Eve created the first sin, so now we're all born into sin. So yeah, you're right. It's not fair, right? Like a football team, there's one penalty and all of them have to suffer and take a 15 yards back. You know, it's kind of like that. So,
Yeah, so why do you
you,
think God made the rules like that?
because he's your creator. He commands a lot of things from you. See, people get angry, but they don't understand. Once you're once you have the Holy Spirit, you don't see it like that. You know, like
Do
once you're
you
born
do you
again.
believe that your God is loving of all people?
Yeah, he loved you so much that he gave you a way out. You know, a sacrifice.
Do you believe
Yeah,
that if that God would want to prevent harm from happening to any of the people that he created?
yeah.
Do you
Like I said, there's
do you
you have
believe
a what's that?
God is capable of preventing harm from happening to his children?
Yeah,
So
sure.
why didn't he? So why
He did.
didn't he prevent that from happening?
Um, well, he did. He gave Jesus to die on the cross for you.
Except he didn't. That's not preventing the
Right.
harm. Think about what we talked about at the beginning of the show. I don't know if you were listening, but God had many hundreds of thousands of people killed prior to the coming of Jesus, and still doesn't guarantee salvation for the people coming after Jesus. So here's the problem:
Well, remember,
is that this whole system is set up for people to fail. Like
Right.
we just said, it's not fair, right? That people didn't commit sin necessarily. Like it was the original sin that condemned everybody. We didn't get a choice on whether or not we were going to contribute to the sin. We were just born with it. So by default, we were condemned. And then the only way to be saved is through a sacrifice that not everybody is going to reap the benefits from.
Right.
Could God
Right.
have stepped in earlier and prevented all of those deaths from happening?
Right. Or shouldn't the sacrifice of his son have cleansed everybody born thereafter from that original sin?
yeah, like you said in Noah, he gave he gave them a choice to get in the ark, and they laughed and they said no, and that and like I said, he gave Adam and Eve a
Did he
choice. You know what
did
I mean?
well
Yeah, he said, "Do not eat
did he
from
give
this
the other
tree."
people? Hold on. Like have you read the story of Noah? Like did God communicate with the other people on the planet prior to the flood?
Um, oh well. Um, I'm sorry. Say that again.
Did God tell so there are plenty of other societies around at the same time of these supposed Noah and Ark story. We know, according to the Bible, God told Noah and his family about what was going to happen. Did God go to the
Right.
other societies and tell them the flood was happening?
Right. Noah's neighbors laughed at him, but did anybody else know what was going on or what they could have done to save themselves?
Well, I mean, the Bible doesn't speak upon like you're talking about like the rest of the whole world.
Hmm.
Yeah, so we don't know, and we have
I
also
mean,
don't have written record of any other society mentioning this kind of story, which is interesting because in societies with such vivid and creative religious structures and religious mythology from that time, where a lot of their writings were about the religions that they followed and the experiences they had with their deities. You would think, at least I would think, that if something so profoundly spiritual were to happen in one of these other societies, that they would have mentioned something about being told that there is going to be a flood. And we don't see this. Like, we see the other flood myths happening. But interestingly enough, like in each of these societies with the flood myths, their own people are the ones that are spared. And it's the other people surrounding them that are the ones washed away. So how come we're getting distinctly different stories about who are the people being killed by the flood? And that's a whole separate topic, even going off of that. But my point is, like, you have a God that supposedly wants the salvation of his people, wants the best thing for his people, and you're claiming that he has the ability to prevent harm from coming to people, and then just somehow didn't make that happen, and in fact set them up for failure, because he created the concept of original sin where everyone else would be condemned thereafter, and did not tell these other outside people how to be saved, and just let them flounder, let them continue to be condemned. So it seems to me, if God had the ability to prevent this, he probably didn't, at least it doesn't seem to me like he cared enough to make that happen. So is he loving? Is he all loving? Does he want the best for his people?
Yeah, I mean, once you're, like I said, your heart's regenerated.
How do you reconcile that with everything I just talked about, though? I just told you all these examples of people that he killed because of a structure that he set up for them to fail.
Okay, well, can I ask you something?
Go for it, yeah.
Do you believe in okay, like, so when you die, where do you believe you're going?
In the dirt.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going anywhere outside of this planet. I think I will cease to be conscious, and I don't know after that.
So just this life is for nothing. Just so Hitler is going to get away with what he did.
I didn't say that. I didn't say life was for nothing, and also that has nothing to Hitler has nothing to do with any of this, because there's no. I do not think that there's any supernatural justice system out there. Like, reality, it sucks.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna say it plain and simple. It sucks. Death
It does.
sucks. It's raw. It's uncomfortable. It sucks. I think that there are bad things that happen to good people all the time, and there are good things that happen to bad people.
Can I stop you there?
Yeah.
Can I stop you there? Okay. See, the Bible says we are not good. No one is good but God. We're wretched sinners that need a savior. See, that's the problem.
But here's the question, though. Here's a question I have for you, sir. Is in the Bible, right? We're all sinners. We're all destined to hell. We need a savior to save us from burning forever. So he sends his son, and he says, I'm going to sacrifice my son to cleanse you of your sin, to give you basically a chance to make it to the eternal kingdom, to make it to heaven. So he clears out all of our credit card debt, right? He clears it out. He makes that payment. There's no debt left. Why are we still then paying on that debt? Why are we still then being told that we are accumulating this interest that we weren't even born for? We weren't even here when these original sinners made God so upset that he didn't fix the problem. We admit it. I mean, you did say that you thought that God had the ability to fix that problem. He could step in and fix anything anytime he wants to. But instead, he gave us this choice, which in my opinion does not seem like a choice, to continue to commit sins and continue to owe him, even though he says himself that Jesus was sent here to forgive us. So are we forgiven or are we not forgiven? And if we are forgiven, why are we still being expected all the time to ask forgiveness, being told that we're sinners, being told that we're bad people, right? Like, doesn't that seem like a cyclical, toxic cycle where no matter what we do, we'll never be good enough? And even though our debt was paid, our debt wasn't paid?
Yeah, well, sin is serious in the eyes of God. See, the Bible says the wages of sin is death. See, he gave the death sentence. See, sin affects everyone. You know what I mean?
Do you think?
But it sounds like it affects everyone because God allows it to. It sounds like God could make it not affect everybody at any point, and he chooses to continue to let it do that for what purpose?
You said you guys believe you're good people, right?
Sure.
I think it's subjective.
Totally subjective, yeah.
Okay. How many lies have you told in your life?
How many lies have you told in your life?
Hold on, Steve.
Son.
Do you believe that I should be condemned to death and torture for eternity for a lie that I told? Is that what we're going with this?
Well, no, I'm going. Yeah, well, I'm going somewhere. If you could just answer my questions, please.
Okay,
If-
go for it.
So,
I don't know how many times I've lied in my life.
Yeah, I've lied.
You told
There have
lies.
been times I've lied for good reasons.
Yes, there are good reasons to lie.
So there are also times I've lied for
so
bad
what do you-
reasons.
okay, so what do you call someone who tells lies?
A human being.
A
It
person
rhymes
who
with,
told a lie.
It starts with L and it rhymes with fire.
So you think that people should be defined by single actions in their life?
No, I'm trying to show you how serious sin is to a holy God.
And I'm trying to show you how ridiculous this is. So do you think
Well, can you
think, like, let's say
can you be
there's a
honest with me?
okay, so I'm gonna give you a hypothetical here. Under the system that you're saying, like, let's say, and this is gonna be a very violent example, and I apologize. So just content warning for people in the audience. But let's say you have a young child who told a white lie to his parents, like he ate a cookie from the cookie jar and wasn't supposed to, and his mom found out, and he said,
Mhm.
"No, it wasn't me, it was the dog." And then that child, if that child was in a horrific accident and lost their life, do you think that child, because they told that lie, is deserving of eternal torment and suffering?
Well, children aren't accountable. Children are they're not accountable for they're not.
How do you know that?
I don't think the Bible says that.
The Bible does not say anything about that. So if that's the case, then not all sin condemns you to death, right?
Right.
So we have an exception there
Well,
to your rules.
And then at what point does God
Well,
think
is
you're an
that-
adult? 18?
I don't know. Like you said, the Bible doesn't say about it, but I mean, like I said, see, we tend to trivialize sin. It's just a white lie, but to God, it's a death sentence. So,
But not always because
Um,
you just gave an exception. So there are exceptions to what sins necessitate a death sentence in your mind, right? You just said that.
okay. I mean, I'm lost. I don't understand what you're
No,
trying to
so
say.
the point was, so you said that all sins condemn you to death. And so I gave an example of a pretty benign lie that in your view is a sin that would require death. But you had said that the fact that it was a young child, that means that they're not accountable for that sin and that they're not going to be condemned. So we have an exception to the rules, which we don't have any evidence that there even is that exception. Possibly you're making that exception because it makes you feel better about your position.
Right.
But we pointed out a hole in your position. And so I'm going to need you to kind of make that make sense for me. Why is that an exception, but other exceptions aren't exceptions?
Right.
Well, I was saying, would you call someone who tells? I was trying to finish what I was saying, but I was interrupted. So, I mean,
I don't think that's the case.
you know what I mean?
You paused. You said you were confused
Yeah,
and you asked
I
me to
mean-
restate.
Yeah, so I clarified.
Yeah.
Well, I was getting to like a point.
Okay.
But,
Well,
Okay.
we're trying to get you to,
So-
I get that you've made multiple points. And so we're
Well,
trying
I'm trying
to get on the
see,
same page with some things because you're kind of moving to different points after we address one of them. But what we need to happen is for you to address the problem that we bring up instead of avoiding responding to it.
Right.
And I don't know if you're conscious that you're doing that,
Yeah.
but that's what it seems like you're doing.
Or at least, can you admit that God is not pro-life? Even if you agree that sin is mortal and it sends you to hell and you need to be punished and we're all sinners, can we at least agree that that means God is not pro-life, even if you think he's everything else that you say?
well, I was trying to get you to see how serious it is to the eyes of the Holy God.
Okay.
Well,
I
your
was getting
point
to a
didn't prove that.
So if you-
Your point didn't prove that.
I wasn't done.
But
You know what I mean?
but you told us that you were confused and you asked us to clarify. We didn't interrupt you.
Well, I was, yeah, you guys did interrupt me. It's like two
No,
against
we
one here. I
didn't.
mean,
We didn't.
Well,
Really?
here's the Here's the thing. I did jump in to give you a scenario because there's a lot of terms that
Yeah.
you're throwing out there, and you're making claims that sin is serious and that lying is a sin, and therefore it's serious. Like, that's essentially the syllogism you gave us. And so I'm trying to establish definitions and criteria for these things so that we can't just move the goalpost with our responses. So, like, I get that you're trying to say that sin is serious, but we're still trying to iron out what even is sin, what qualifies as sin, and what the punishment is for sin, and what are the boundaries of this punishment. Like, how would this be enforced? Like, who would be subjected to this? Like, because these are all questions that we need to know, right? Like, if you're in a courtroom and you're being sentenced for a crime, right, you'd want to know what crime specifically you committed, right? You'd want to know what the standard is for punishment for that crime, and you'd want to know like all of the context surrounding like what you're getting into, and like you'd want to know that you're being treated the same as other people who committed the same crime. And if there are exceptions to the way it was like the way you were being convicted and what your sentence would be, you'd want to know what those exceptions are and why those exceptions exist, right? Like it's helping us understand, like, if I'm getting into a contract and I want to know, here are the things I'm allowed to do, and here's the punishment if I don't do those things, it should be very clear to me what the rules are, right? That's why we're
Right.
asking these questions. I just want to be clear on what the rules are, and I want these rules to be consistent among all these examples.
Right.
Does that make
Okay,
sense?
so I think so. It's a lot.
So
Yeah.
do you think that God is pro-life? Even if you believe he's everything else, do you think he's pro-life, or would you be willing to admit that there are circumstances under which he thinks life deserves to end?
Well, I mean, I'm a Christian, so I think, like I said, God gave us a way out. You know what I mean? And that's through
Except
the
that
death
we
and
just told
resurrection
you,
of Jesus.
except we told you that the way out really isn't a good one.
And he paved the way in, and he can change the way out any time that he wants. So he, in a sense, you're saying, developed our punishment.
Yeah, he gave you a choice. So, I mean, I don't know what you guys want to hear that. I just can't. I have to tell you the truth. You know what I mean? Like, God's not patting sinners on the head, saying good job. You guys go ahead, keep getting drunk, keep destroying this, MADD against drunk drivers, and no, man. That's why he says don't get drunk. You know what I mean?
I don't think he says that.
Because sin is serious.
Steve, here's my problem with all of this, and I hope that you leave this call and you think about what we've talked about today, because what I hear from you and what I hear from a lot of people is that you see the world in very black and white. Like, everything is either good or it's bad. And that's what the Bible kind of teaches. The problem is the reality that we see is not black and white. Like the scenario I gave you with the child with the cookie jar, that's a very gray scenario that puts into question the black and white. Like, is this black or is this white? I don't know anymore.
Right. And
because
the idea
it's too complicated. And so it's like, what we are talking about here are the questions that we had when we were leaving religion. It was often these gray areas that say, I don't know how to answer this. I don't know the best way to approach this. And it's a terrible situation. But instead of questioning that, and instead of saying, hey, this doesn't actually make sense, I need to think about this more, you've just jumped back to find a way to make it black and white. Right. And so I think you're ignoring the gray in favor of your black and white, even though we've presented multiple examples of why this is more of a difficult question than you're making it.
Right. And then to present his own gray area where he says children aren't to be held accountable in the same way that adults are, that alone is proof that it can't be black and white. Because one, okay, that means not all sin is terminal. Two, at what point, at what age does God say you are now an adult who's responsible for your actions and your sins? And then also, why then does age change a sin from being a death sentence to being acceptable because you're a child? There's so many gray area points in there.
Right. Like I hear you guys are saying. It's just I see things. See, like the Bible says, Satan blinds the minds of unbelievers. So you guys are blinded. So you guys need amazing grace. See,
that's a claim. That's a whole separate call, which I'd love you to call in about, because I'm not convinced that any Satan exists. And you'd have to do a lot. You'd have to provide a lot of evidence to demonstrate that point. It's interesting to me because you keep going back to the Bible and just asserting that the things that the Bible says are true, but we don't even accept that. So maybe that's a separate call. But do you kind of understand why we're questioning all of what you brought?
Yeah, that's why you guys wanted me to call in, right? Because you want to hear my beliefs. That's what I thought. I'm sorry.
We've been asking. We're just trying to get you to tell us what they are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to explain to you guys, but you guys clearly interrupt me and you don't want to, hear what I have to say. And
the point of the show, it's not necessarily to let people come on and preach, because I can go and listen to preachers. I've listened to many preachers in my life. The thing is, when you have a person on stage preaching without any dialogue, it's very easy to just take what they say as true and then go about your day and think, oh yeah, that was a great thing. But the point is, like, we're trying to have a dialogue and talk about, is this thing true that they said? How do we know this thing is true? What do we do with this thing if it is true or if it isn't true? How does that impact how I go about my day-to-day life, right? And so I think this is the case with any belief. Like, it's not just Christians. I want to talk to Muslims. I want to talk to Hindus. I want to talk to other atheists, because there are times that atheists will call into the show and they'll have a bad reason for why they believe what they believe. And I'll call them out on the things that they say too. So, like, the whole point is, can we get to the truth, whatever it is? And we want to hear what your belief is, but we also want to talk about the why and point out, like, I see this hole in the argument. Can we address this? Like, is there a reason for this hole, or is this something that we need to move on from and accept a different belief?
I was trying to dialogue, but you guys clearly don't want to hear it. So I don't know. I mean, the woman I talked to before the show said, "What do I want to talk about?" So I mean, I'm confused here. I mean, I don't. You know what I mean? Like, you guys clearly don't want to. You guys want to hear your truth, like you guys don't want to hear.
We just want you to answer our questions. No, we just want you to answer our questions. It sounds like you came with.
Well, I was asking you a question first. I mean, you guys weren't even answering my question, so I don't understand.
No, but we did. We did. We answered lots of questions.
Okay, so what do you call someone who steals things?
We told you, a person
who
steals things. Yeah.
Well, they're called a thief, right?
Okay. So does that make God pro-life or not? Is God, just yes or no question, is God pro-life? Do you think he is, or do you think he isn't? Neither, like, whatever your answer is, yes or no.
God's pro-life. Yeah, God's pro-life. He created a savior. You know what I mean? He created a sacrifice.
So how do we justify?
So there is a way out.
So how do we justify all of the people that died because of the rules God made?
Well, he gave us a choice. Question. He told Noah.
Steve, I don't know how much further we can go in this conversation, and I would love for you to call again, because I think we're having good discussion, and you're bringing up points that a lot of people bring up. The thing is, though, I think you're using a script. I think when we pose a question that goes against the script that you want to use, you're not quite sure what to do with it. And that's kind of why we ask the questions, because I had the same script. Sydney had the same script. And kind of what made us question our faith at the end of the day was the questions that took us off the script, because reality doesn't have a script at all. And we've noticed kind of throughout the conversation, and why we've stopped you so many times is because we'll ask a question and then instead of addressing the question, you'll go on to the next point in your script.
Right.
Answer my question. What the? You guys didn't even. I thought this show was for
We answered.
us. I'm
We answered your
confused.
questions, but the problem is we answered them in a way that wasn't your scripted answer that you expected.
Right.
And so then instead of addressing that, you moved on. So what you should do, instead of wishing for us to give the answer you want, is to take the answer we give you and go with it.
Mhm.
I don't know. Have you ever done like improv theater? Or I know Sydney and I were talking about this before the show, but the concept of yes and, it's like when you have a person you're in dialogue with, you don't just ignore what they said and go on with whatever you were wanting to say. You take the answer they said and you say yes, and here's the next step of what you told me.
Right.
Which is what we were trying to do with
Yeah,
Yes.
right?
You guys done that to me, so I mean, you know what I mean? You guys didn't want to hear my dialogue.
We've gone with you. So
We-
I think we've addressed this
Yes.
enough, and I think you should call in.
Yeah,
I
well-
think you should think about the conversation. Go back and listen to the conversation again, and then call in next week. We're here live every Sunday at 1 p.m. Central Time, and we'd love to keep having this discussion with you. And even listen to some of the other callers, because you'll see this is kind of how the discussions go, and
Yeah.
I think it'll be worthwhile. I think this was a good call today, even if there's some friction at the end here.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate you calling in, and I hope you have a good rest of your Sunday. All right, that was
That
a
was
really good call, I think.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Kind of like your last minute thoughts on how that went.
I think you nailed it. I think there was a script there. I think he wanted to have a specific conversation and he called in expecting to have only that conversation. And I think he misconstrued us asking him questions with us trying to change the subject, or I think he expected us to try and gotcha him a bunch of times. And when we didn't, the questions he had prepared and the answers he had prepared and the comebacks he had prepared didn't fit. He came in here ready to say, you guys are interrupting me, you won't let me speak, when in reality we didn't interrupt him and we let him speak. And I just think the things that in his mind he had ready to go didn't fit into the conversation, and it just kind of derailed from there.
Yeah. Well, I hope he calls back next week. In the meantime, we do have some super chats that came in during the last call, so I want to read those out for everybody. We have $5 from Miranda Rensberger, says, ACA hosts always pronounce my name correctly. Most other people don't. Evidence that atheists are smarter than average. Thank you for your contribution, Miranda, and I'm glad I got your name right. When it's separated out, it's a lot easier to read. I guess like the longer names without the space, my brain pauses a little bit, but I'm glad that we got it right for you. And then the next one, we got a couple more. One from Rosie Raid, $2 Canadian says, but why is Bernice? And if you don't understand that, it's an inside joke from a stream earlier this week. But ask yourself, why? Why is Bernice? Do not ask who is Bernice. Do not ask what is Bernice. Ask yourself, why is Bernice?
That's great.
And we'll read other super chats kind of throughout the show. We do have some more callers on the line. I think we did plan some fun screenshots about abortion that we saw in our comment section. I think we'll kind of sprinkle these throughout the show. I kind of want to read one of these right now because they are very funny. So, and again, for people in the audience who want to talk about abortion, we have open lines, and I'd love to hear your thoughts if you agree with the comments here or if you don't. But one that we saw, and I'd love for Sydney to address as well.
Should I read it in a dramatic voice?
Yeah, go for it. If it pops up.
Either everyone's life matters or no one's life matters. And if everyone's life matters, then abortion is wrong. If no one's life matters, then everyone's opinion and definition on abortion is valid. So I feel people who support abortion hold no value in this world, and I should have the right to terminate them.
Wow. This took an interesting turn at the end, and this kind of goes a little bit hand in hand with the call that we just had, which is kind of why I wanted to read it. This like either all lives matter or no lives matter. And then the end saying that you should be able to abort people who have no value in the world, which it's not even coherent, because abortion is not about a life of anybody. It is about
Right.
a pregnancy. You cannot terminate a pregnancy that's already over. And if you've
Right.
already been birthed into the world, you cannot be aborted because you're not in utero. And in fact, definitionally speaking too, you cannot be aborted after 20 weeks of gestation. So you can be terminated after 20 weeks of gestation, but you
Right.
cannot be aborted. So
And
this whole phrase is
if you're
incoherent.
pro-life, you should also be pro-life of the person bearing the child. I don't understand. Like, I don't, like, if I am going to die because something is wrong with my pregnancy, I would hope that pro-lifers would say her life matters. She should live. That's just like that's just me.
Right. Yeah. And that's why I want to have so many people call in about this, because I want to address these topics. But that's a little taste of kind of what we might get to at the end of the show too, if we
If
decide
people
we
are
want to
brave
read some
enough.
more of those. If we're brave enough to read some more
People
of these
have the
comments.
cojones to call in.
But I do want to talk about some fun things going on in the ACA. Speaking especially about our brick fundraiser, which we've been running for a little while, that will be completing phase 1 of at the end of January. You can get your own personalized brick at the library. And we've been talking all about this. It's super cool. If you want a permanent piece of you at the ACA library, you can purchase a brick with your name on it, and we will be featuring a brick of the week on the shows. And this week's brick is from Pierre in Florida, who engraved, "In the beginning, man created God, Pierre 1-1." So thank you so much, Pierre, for your brick purchase. And I love that we're going to be able to see that at the library in Austin.
I wonder if
Additionally,
there's anybody who's not going to be happy to see that at the library in Austin. Just walking
maybe.
by, reading the bricks, being like, what the?
Yeah,
What
I'm
the
very
heck is this?
curious if people walking by will get a kick out of it. I'm curious too, like that when we see these bricks all go up at the library, I want to see people's selfies of you with your brick. Like, I want to see people going to Austin, finding their brick at the ACA and getting a selfie and tagging the ACA and all the shows on social media, because we should make a scrapbook of the selfies with people's bricks. I'm
We
just thinking of all these cool projects.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a great idea. And what you should do if you want a selfie with your brick at the ACA library is you should do that selfie in some ACA merch, which you can buy at the ACA merch vault. And you could pick up some limited edition items there, as well as some of the items that we sell kind of throughout the year. And if you want some Talk Heathen specific merch, that is clearly the best of the Atheist Community of Austin shows. So please buy some Talk Heathen merch. You can buy the other shows merch too, but as long as you also buy the Talk Heathen merch first. So that's your number one priority. But we have the 5 most popular t-shirt designs from last year that are now featured on the website. But this will only be open until the end of December. So be sure to get your orders in, and you can use a discount code, The Vault, to get 10% off of your entire purchase. You can find that at tiny.cc/merch ACA. And I'd love to see you at some point with your merch selfies. Also, you can get at tiny.cc/ACA flyers. You can find printable call-in flyers that you can post at your church, at your work, at community billboards, at all the places, so that people you know can call into the shows on Sundays. So if you have a friend that wants to come preach to us about salvation, if you have friends that are pro-life. If you are at a university and just want to further some more discussion, you can print some of those flyers and post them wherever you'd like, and get a picture, get a selfie of yourself in some Talk Heathen merch, and send your selfie to tv@atheist-community.org, and we might feature your picture on an upcoming show with that. And some other ways that you can support the atheist community of Austin are that you can become a channel member. You can click the join button down below the video. You can get custom chat emotes and help perpetuate the mission of the ACA and Talk Heathen. You can also send in super chats like we've been reading throughout the show. And if you aren't able to financially contribute, you can also go into the side chat, be an active chatter. You can hit the like button and subscribe to the channel and share out the videos. And those are great ways to help as well that require no financial contribution. And speaking of super chats, we have another super chat as well from Doorknob Head, sending 666, saying, nice to see Sister Sydney and Brother Ben on the stream together. What a dynamic duo. Thanks for your efforts. Happy, joy, enjoy your Sunday. Thank you to Doorknob Head.
Thank you, Doorknob
appreciate
Head.
seeing you here.
Thank you.
And with that, I think I'm ready to take another call. And I want to take Damon, him from California. Lots of California callers today. It looks like you want to talk about the dangers of religious authority.
Interesting.
Do you have a specific question related to that?
Yeah, I did. First of all, I just wanted to say, I think it's cool that you guys shout out the people behind the scenes and doing all that. That was really cool. I haven't listened to the show in a while, so I thought that's cool that you guys do that. But when it comes to religious authority, so I was watching this video, and it was by a creator named Dark Matter. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. Pretty sure. But he was bringing up something interesting, and it's that, religion is on decline recently, and he asserts it's because of fringe politics and Christian nationalism, scaring away a lot of people that once were believers, by and also, biblical literalists also play a part in this. He suggests at the end of the video for us to be what's the word? Do the exact opposite of what they're doing, like being patient and respectful and like hearing these people out, whatnot, holding, values that they claim to have. Because, like, here's something I noticed, like when you guys were on the previous call, the person on the previous call was avoiding some of your questions because he knew that, in my opinion, I assert that he knew that he would be admitting to something, shameful, like with the hypothetical with the kid and everything he gave. So Dark Matter suggests that this new Christianity that's replacing the old, basically, is more, they will admit to that shamefulness and be proud of it. So I want to discuss the dangers of that, because I have to commend you guys for your patience with these callers, because I couldn't handle that. You know what I'm saying? How do we go about addressing this new threat, like as atheists or whatever? Because it seems to me if they get more power, then our opinions are going to be, they will probably be persecuted again, like in the past. And I'm a bit afraid of that, because these people are calling for, the Appalachian of the separation in church and state and a bunch of crazy shit like this. And I'm sorry for saying that.
You can use those words on this show. That is allowed.
Okay, cool. But yeah, that's something
So
I'm very concerned with.
So just to kind of understand, just to make sure I understand what you're asking, you're saying now that people are being more open and more willing to share their ideas about, like, yeah, I do think these awful things are actually correct. And I do think that if you follow God's word, it's okay to have these opinions and these thoughts, even if they impede on other people's rights and freedoms and things like that. As we hear and see more of those people, how do we address that? And how do we keep ourselves from basically being persecuted?
Well, that, and also, how do we keep our cool with all this? Because I don't know if you get callers like that, but
I've actually got.
How do you guys handle that? Because, like if I were on this show, like, I'm putting myself in your guys' shoes. If I was on this show and getting callers like this, I would go insane.
Yeah.
So what are some healthy steps to deal with this? And if, this new religious movement is taking on that fringeness, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a word, but
so I've actually, I hope
that,
Yeah, I hope that I've got a good answer for you. I think that I do, but if you don't mind, Ben, I would love to take this one.
I'll go for it.
So I'm actually a professional debater. I've been debating since 2010. And I also coach debate and I teach public speaking classes. One of the things, when we think debate, we think these videos of like, oh, so-and-so destroys so-and-so, and there's like spittle and there's anger. But I found personally that in real life, a lot of times that style of debate is not as effective in real life as it is to watch people do, say, for example, on YouTube, things like that. But one of the best ways that you can approach these types of conversations and these types of people is remembering that at the end of the day, nothing they say will change what you believe. Nothing they say will be necessarily valuable to you in any way other than just learning more about what the other side is saying. And nothing they say in these conversations have merit of any kind towards you. So having been a debater and a stand-up comedian, I have been called every name under the sun across the internet before. None of those things impacted who I was when I logged off, hung up, walked away. And when we truly believe what we believe, if you say you're an atheist and you're like, I am 100% solidified in my belief, I'm 100% solidified in the fact that I don't believe in God, that I'm an atheist, nothing they can say can change that about you and can harm your atheism. So the reason I feel that I have patience with people when I'm talking to them about these discussions is, one, I definitely want to learn. I always want to know what the opposition is saying and what they're thinking and what their conversational tactics are developing into, because it's just good to know. You just always want to have an eye on people that disagree with you on everything. Two, you hear it all the time. All the time, at least once a week, I'm being asked how I can be a moral person if I don't believe in God. So it's nothing new. It's not surprising or anything. And then at the same time, I recognize that people who are devoutly religious are living in fear. They're living in a constant fear of going to hell, of sinning, of God, of God's wrath, of all sorts of things. The church is very good at highlighting all the things they should be scared about. They should be scared of this type of person because they're going to turn their kids into that. They should be scared of this type of belief because they're going to turn you and your kids into that. And I don't live in fear of any kind. So when somebody wants to argue with me, there's nothing they can say that will scare me. There's nothing they can say that will change who I am as a person, that will change my belief system, that can scare me. And it's likely not the first time I've heard whatever it is they're about to say. And at the debater in me says, at the moment they just start lobbing insults, they're losing. So the more someone insults me, it's actually a compliment, because that means I'm doing a good job and I've put them in a position where they don't have any more valuable answers. So instead they just start saying, you're dumb, you're an idiot, you're going to hell, you're burning forever, these types of things. But also, if those conversations exhaust you, you don't have to have them. Sometimes when somebody asks me a question, I will literally ask them, are you asking me this question to learn about it, or are you asking this question to argue about it? And I just give them the chance to be honest. And if they're like, I kind of just want to argue about it. If you're not in the mood to argue, you could say, I'm not in the mood to argue. If you're in the mood, you can argue about it. If they want to hear your perspective, let them hear your perspective. I have lots of friends who are devout Christians who completely understand that our perspectives are entirely different. But I've also given them the chance to tell me their side, and they've given me the chance to tell them my side. And I also don't engage in those topics with them when I don't have to. Like if I go home for Christmas, I'm not going to talk about this stuff because I just don't want to engage over Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever next time you see these people. But if it's online conversations, they can't hurt you. There's nothing they can say or do that'll change you as a person. At the end of the day, when you hang up, you still believe what you believe. You still have the same place that you live, the same pets that you have, the same job that you work. And we give too much power to their words when we allow them to trigger us, I guess, at the risk of using a word that's used too much, you know. I don't know. Does that answer your question? Is that helpful?
Here's my concern, right?
Yeah.
Is their political power grab.
Oh, that was my other thing that I'm sorry, I forgot to pinpoint that. Even though evangelicals and fundamentalists are very, very loud and they're very, very public about their opinion, they're actually losing in numbers. Their beliefs and their churches are actually hemorrhaging members. And you might be excited to know that there are a lot more people leaving religion, leaving the faith, disidentifying with the name Christianity than there are people out here kicking and screaming and trying to make laws about things. So while we're hearing a lot more about it, and while we're hearing a lot more about people in power trying to make these laws, the number of people who support those people are sinking. They're declining in great numbers, and I think that's why we're hearing so much about it, because the people at the top are kicking and screaming and they're in their last throes and they see that they're no longer popular anymore and they're trying to make the most of their voice, when in reality I think what we're going to find is larger and larger populations of secular individuals are going to be just statistically in positions of power, because that's just what type of people we're going to be dealing with. That's going to be the type of people in the pool of individuals to choose from. I don't know if that makes you feel any better.
I think like my little bit of advice here, especially for internet arguing, is like kind of going along the lines of what Sydney was saying. Have boundaries, have really good boundaries, because you don't owe anybody your time, and especially if it is not mentally healthy for you to. Sometimes it's better to walk away and not engage. So have those boundaries for yourself of when do I feel comfortable engaging and when do I not feel comfortable engaging. But also something that I do and a lot of other people do too is only debating publicly. Like I do not accept debates in my inbox. Like I do not debate privately. Some people prefer that where they're not going to be, getting interference from other people. But my view is that I want everybody to be held accountable for what they say. So if it's public, people know my whole perspective on everything that I've said, and they know what the other person has said. So it's less likely to be screenshotted and just shared in bits and pieces. People will have access to the whole thing. So I prefer to debate publicly only, and that might be a way to go for you.
Yeah, of course. Because I'm not a public figure or a debater or anything like that. My argument, my question was more relating to like how, like, do you practice that same kind of patience with like people in person?
Yes.
Because some people can get very rowdy with that stuff, and like through my experience.
Yes. Do you know what
I had to walk away from stuff like that a lot.
Do you know what makes rowdy people the maddest and like burns them out of steam the most? Is if you nod and you smile while they're talking. that, like, and I'm not talking about in a way that's going to like escalate to them to violence, but people think, for whatever reason, people always think they're the first person to come up to me in person and demand that I answer their questions in person, which is totally fine. Like, I'll answer whatever questions they have. But if while they're making a point, or they say, you know, and I just think that atheists are really ignorant because this, if you're just like, yeah, no, keep going. No, that's totally fine. Just give them permission to keep going. They won't know how to keep going. They won't know what to say. They'll be confused because they expect you to step in and cut them off. But you're just like, oh, yeah. Like, oh, okay, cool. Well, it's unfortunate that you think that way, but did you know this and this and this? Here's my answer. You asked me this. Here's my answer. I hope that's good. Feel free to call in anytime. When you're friendly and engaging and you smile and you nod while they're talking, it disarms them so much that they get confused, and then you just walk away. You're just like, bye, have a great day, see you later.
Right.
Even if you go home and like scream into a pillow and like throw things, because I have done that, nothing scares people more than when you're stoked to hear them insult you and they're like, I didn't plan for this contingency. I thought you were just, I didn't plan beyond the point where you get mad and you cut me off, so now I don't know what else to say. Or it just de-escalates the conversation. Several times they haven't walked away or they haven't gotten mad. They've just de-escalated and realized it wasn't going to work. And then I wave, I give them my card, and then I'm like, email me if you ever have any other questions. I'm not actually probably going to respond to them, and they never email me. So so far they haven't yet. But it's hard. Don't get me wrong. It's hard.
Like for me, like, okay, so like, cause this is where I'm coming from, kind of like, the internet, you know, those are people miles away, you know, that don't matter to me, of course. But like, what does concern me is like when my coworkers start like casually dropping like Ben Shapiro lines, like on the job, it's kind of weird, man. I don't know.
It is
weird. Like, this stuff didn't used to happen. You know, I remember when I was a kid and YouTube was just coming out, and I was kind of like weird for doing that. You know what I mean? Like, cause
and that's a good thing
to. I was a kid, and I was listening to like Jesus freak debates and stuff. Like, yeah, I was a weird kid. But like I feel like, you know, really strange individuals are getting platforms these days, and it's making like, okay, I do understand religion is in the decline, but that leaves the more fringe alienated, right, and they'll probably get more fringe because of that. So
right,
I guess that's my main concern. And like when it comes to the power, like I'm optimistic somewhat about this stuff, because like my whole thing though is I don't know, they just there's a lot of like violent rhetoric these days.
Well, something else to keep in mind is
I'm sorry,
a lot of times. Oh, sorry. Yeah, something else to keep in mind is a lot of times when you ask people to clarify, they don't know how. So somebody makes a comment, they just make a flagrant comment. Because I live in Tennessee, I've been exactly what you're talking about. You're in an office minding your own business, and somebody randomly just spouts out something that nobody asked about, and it's clearly to either stoke an argument or to kind of establish dominance. Like, this is an area where we believe this, right? A lot of times, if you just ask people, "Oh, what do you mean? What does that mean?" Then they'll repeat the same thing again, and you're like, "Yeah, no, I heard you. What does that mean exactly? So what do you mean by that?" Many times, they did not plan for that step, and they just say, "Oh, well, I just think that, you know, people, you know, nobody wants to work anymore," or something like that. And you're like, "Oh, okay. So what do you mean by that?" If you just continue to ask them what they mean, because it's not their original thought or idea, they don't know what they mean actually, and they didn't expect you to be interested and ask them about it. They either expected you to stand up and leave because you're offended, or they expected you to be on the same side as them and already believing them and just letting them spew those things. It's very interesting how quickly people will de-escalate situations when you act interested in what they have to say as someone who doesn't agree with them. They don't know how to, their brains stop working. It's like like a computer with that like death spiral. You know, they didn't plan for that contingency, because all the people they're watching, these people you're talking about with these platforms, prep them for a fight. They prep them for an argument and a debate, and they tell them exactly what to say. And you saw with our first caller, when we didn't fight with him, he didn't know what to say. He didn't know where to go from there because he even
Right.
had his responses planned, and we didn't set him up for those responses. And when you don't give people a platform to respond in the way they've been trained, so and so, I'm not going to say names, I'm not going to name names, but we all know. Like they taught me that this is the way you trigger somebody. It's like when you don't act triggered, not only do they not know how to respond because their training and their script prepped them for what they thought you were going to say, but they're scared of you a little bit. They think you're like a little bit nuts, and they get a taste of their own medicine. And it's delightful. I highly encourage you to do that because it's a beautiful thing to witness with your own eyes.
Yeah, and I'd love to see kind of where this goes. And I apologize for jumping in. We got a couple other callers I want to get to as well, and we're getting closer and closer to the end of the show. But I encourage you to try some of these out and then call back and let us know if anything improves in your conversations.
All right, for sure. Yeah, take it easy, guys.
Thanks. Have a good rest of your Sunday.
I don't know why I was waving like I was looking at him. I'm waving at you.
And before we take some more calls, we have our very important ritual of the day, which is the top 5 patrons of the week. Sydney, can you see them in this chat?
I can.
Would you like to do the honor of reading off the top 5 patrons of the week?
What kind of voice would you like me to read them off in? Do you want like an accent? Do you want like a theme?
Choose.
Do you want like an energy?
Choose your adventure.
I'm gonna do ASMR.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Top 5 patrons. Dingleberry Jackson. Oops, all singularity. Devor Valyin. Calvetti Helvetti. Left in the Leaves. Honorable mention. Justin.
That was cringe and great at the same time.
You're like, that made me very uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable.
It was great at the same time. And if you want to pay for Sydney to never do that again, you can go to tiny.cc/PatreonTH and get your name on the list and hopefully not have it read like that or have it read like that. I don't know what your preference is. You might like that. You could also send a super chat telling us to never do that again.
Please do.
That is also an option.
Listen, if you send a super chat with the style in which you want it read, I'll do it.
Oh, that's a thought. There you go. And we do have a super chat from Smile of Whispering Chaos. Sends $5 saying, had a Christian tell me it's moral to unalive babies if the parents earned the capital punishment by God's morals. God's morality is corrupt. Yeah. So basically it's moral, I guess, like it's moral in God's standards to unalive a baby if you also unalive the people who committed the abortion, which that's just...
There's also another super chat I want to make sure we don't miss. And this is from Ben 9 Lives, who donated $4.99. Thank you, Ben 9 Lives. And they say, thank you for engaging with callers that try to preach instead of participating in conversations.
Thank you, Ben 9, for your contribution as well. And we are trying our best with that. I'm really excited to take this next call. So we have a couple, and I'm hoping we can get to both of these before the end of the show, because I know one of these has been on the line for a while, and I apologize that we haven't taken your call yet. But somebody called in about our kind of topic of the day. So we're going to talk to Mr. D, he, him in Canada, who says abortion is bad. Is this the topic you'd like to talk about? You are live on the show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you for the call, for accepting the call. So it's Mr. D for short, Mr. D here. I heard you say Numbers 5. Yeah, Numbers 5:27 promotes abortion. Did I get that right? Because I just came in 5 minutes ago and I heard that part.
Yep.
Are you aware that the word yarek is used in verse 27, which is not the same word for a seed, which is in verse 28? The Hebrew word zarah. So the verse 27 doesn't make mention of a child. So why would you say that is somehow promoting abortion when the word zarah is used in verse 28?
What's it talking about? What's it talking about?
It's talking about she would have a swelled stomach and a defiled or shabby thighs. Basically, that's what it means in Hebrew. The word yarat means thighs, loins or thighs. not children. Verse 28, the word Zerah. Didn't you do your verification before you made this argument?
Wait, so are you saying that somebody still in the womb is not a child? Is that what we're
First of all,
saying?
it's not even mentioned if she had a child or not. If you read from
the context of the verse is that a person who was unfaithful to her husband, so like has had intercourse, would then take this to prevent a pregnancy. Like that's the context of this.
The last 10 verses make no mention of a pregnancy. Nothing about
So what is the purpose? So what is the purpose of taking this cocktail, this medicinal cocktail, after being like unfaithful, like to just cause swelling? Like what's the purpose of that?
Yeah, if you read the last 10 verses, they would have told you specifically is about you taking this holy water, and if you lie under oath, taking the name of God in vain, that is going to be shown by you having a big stomach and defiled ties. So that's how we're going to visually be able to see if you lied or told the truth. No mention of children from the last 10 verses. Did you guys read the last 10 verses? Because
what translation are you using, and how do you know?
Hebrew. You first of all, you can go to the. I don't know why you got that translation, because you could go to.
What's your? Give me your source. Give me your source.
Hebrew so what then?
You know what a Hebrew? You know what a Hebrew?
No, give me, Mr. D. Give me the translation of the Bible you are using to make this claim, because right now I have all of the translations into English of the Bible. Which, yeah, sure, there are some mistranslations in that. Or I have your claim of what a certain like translation says. So tell me.
And I don't actually.
I want to verify
what he's saying. It says.
Yeah, I want to verify your claim. Also, I'm very confused about what your claim is.
So she should drink water, and then what? Then what happens? She swells, and then like. Does she pee herself? Like, what is the purpose of these 10 verses you keep talking about then, if it's not to terminate a pregnancy or to avoid a pregnancy? Like, what are you saying she's supposed to do, and what's the point? What's the purpose? What physically happens in layman's terms? Explain to us.
Yeah, I'll do that in a second. I'm going to address the last guy. First of all, I didn't go to a translation. I went to the Hebrew. You're going to translations. I'm going to the Hebrew.
Yeah, where did you find this? Do you have... Mr. D, if you're reading this in Hebrew, do you have a book that you are looking out of? Did you go to a website where you found this? Where did you find this information? Because it should be freely accessible to anyone, right? Mm-hmm. If you're able to access it, I should be able to access it, right?
All right. I'm going to give you the information. Use the errors, because I said that at least 7 times. Google, Bible Hub, Numbers 527, Hebrew interlinear. You're going to go to Strong's Concordance. That's the #1 Hebrew interlinear scholars use. Simple stuff. What is wrong?
Do you speak Hebrew? Do you know biblical Hebrew? Have you studied it?
Hebrew interlinears is for people who don't speak Hebrew. So you can get the definition, the original root word. Oh my goodness.
Okay, so why should I trust your interpretation of a language that you don't know?
Right.
Why are you an expert?
Give you the definition of the word. Scholars give you the.
Why are you, Mr. D? Why are you yelling at me?
Yeah.
Why are you yelling at me? That is uncalled for.
I'm sorry. I didn't know you were that sensitive. I said it 7 times. Scholars. Not my interpretation. It's not my translation. The word is Yarek.
Which scholar?
Which means.
I'm gonna mute you, Mr. D. Which scholars? Cite your sources, which scholars, and how do you know that what they're saying is correct?
Right.
Because this sounds like an appeal to authority fallacy, where you're not even citing a specific scholar. You're just saying scholars' vague terminology have agreed on this. I don't know. How do I know that this isn't a rogue scholar that came up with something on his own? Like, for example, if I'm a doctor, right? If I started citing Dr. Oz and said, well, Dr. Oz said this thing, he's a doctor, so he's right. That would be wrong, right? Like, you'd want to verify my source. You'd want to verify which doctor I'm citing, and you'd want to verify that that information is consistent with the rest of the consensus, right? So that's what I'm trying to get at here. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out what source you're using, what scholars you're citing, and is this different from the consensus? And
Right.
if so, where does it differ against the consensus and why?
Yeah.
I'm going to let you speak again, but these are the questions I want to know. You are unmuted.
Okay, so I'm muted. All right, so I'm going to
You're
answer
unmuted.
two ways. Number one, you ask for the scholars, right? So pay attention.
Yes.
Brown, Driver, Briggs, 3 scholars there. Strong's Concordance, multiple scholars there. There is no Hebrew interlinear, no scholarship that agrees with you. That's the point. You can't quote no scholarship. I just gave you a multiple scholarship right there. That's number one. And
You can quote the Bible,
You're the one who wants. You're the one who wants to translate
literal Bible. We're just quoting the Bible, my friend.
You're telling me I did an appeal to appeal to authority.
Okay, so here's okay. All right. So you translated into so I'm looking at this this lexicon, right?
Same.
So you cited a lexicon, which is a word. Basically, you can find words and translate words. So here's my question then. How did you do this translation of the verse? Did you find individual words and translate those individual words using the lexicon? Or did you look at the context of the entire paragraph or sentence?
All right. Am I unmuted?
Yeah, you are unmuted. You can talk. I'd appreciate if you would.
So number one, was it interlinear? Yeah, okay, so I'm trying to make a statement now. It's interlinear, number one. And number two, the scholars already translated it. I don't have to translate it. And number three, every time the word is used, it never means a seed. The word seed, zara, is used in verse 28. Never once. So can you give me, according to you, you said it was an appeal to authority. You obviously don't know what that means. Can you give me what scholarship you're appealing to say that it means seed or a child? Where's your scholarship?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking you to prove. I'm going with what the majority of translations say. I don't know, which is why I'm saying that you should demonstrate to me why your point is correct if it's different than the majority of translations out there.
We're asking, we're just asking you to give us more on why yours is right. We're asking you to tell us yours is right.
Okay, first of all, you lied because I'm on Bible Hub and I see a lot of translation that doesn't say what you're saying. So you're lying. So you obviously didn't read all the Bible version. You went to NIV. You went to the NIV, which is one of the most disgusting translations out there. But why are you arguing for translations when I'm going to the original language? Are you serious?
Except you're not, though, because you're also using a translation. You're translating it.
You're literally translating it. The scholars translated that to you.
So then how are you getting it to English? You haven't given us, like, you've literally taken the words and translated them. That is a translation. So we're trying to figure out if your translation is correct. Right.
The word is Yarak. There's no translation to that. Strong's number 3409. There's no translation. The word is what the word means.
Why do you keep laughing?
Are you guys serious?
Are you serious?
Look, next time, just do your verification, your due diligence, so that way you don't look foolish. If you look,
whatever call center you're looking at
is right now. Thank you very much.
Probably answer that.
So next time, don't use the Bible to support your abortion narrative. Do whatever you want as an atheist, but just don't mischaracterize my God. That's all. Don't do that, and everything will be.
Oh no! Don't worry. You did that yourself. So.
Yes.
Oh yeah. I did that. It's very delicious. Please promote the video and show ignorance to a person that's.
All right, we're gonna move on.
Yeah.
See, those phone calls are kind of fun because we don't even need to do much.
Yeah.
He did that himself. We have one more call, and let's take Sergei, who's an atheist, him from Canada, wanting to talk about physician-assisted suicide. So kind of content warning for people in the audience. This might get a little bit heavy, just a heads up. Sergei, what would you like to talk about? Do you have a specific question related to this?
Yeah, and it's not going to be that heavy, Ben. I don't know if you're familiar with the Canadian healthcare, but here in Canada in 2016, they've implemented MAID, medical assistant in death. And so doctors have started offering assisted suicide unprompted. So the patient didn't ask, but the doctor said, well, we can't help you. How would you like to die instead? I'm sorry.
Do you know if do you know if that's the way that they've been phrasing it, or is that your guess?
No, this was actually stated in an article I read on Tuesday.
Because I have questions. So number one, is this one specific person that said it in that way? Because I honestly don't believe that that's the majority of people that would be having the conversation in that manner. Reason being, we have conversations frequently with people about their goals of care, right? So we talk about end of life. We talk about, like, do they desire full recovery? Do they desire comfort? Do they desire CPR? Do they desire a tube? All of these things we have conversations with unprompted all of the time, because we need to know. You just never know when something is going to happen. And especially with very terminal patients, you need to have a goals of care discussion with them. And it's a very difficult conversation to have, to say, hey, this is the reality of your medical condition. Here are your options. And so my guess is that the majority of doctors that are offering this unprompted are phrasing it as a, here are your options, and not just saying, you're terminal, how do you want it? Like, do you want to assisted suicide? Like, that's, I'm sure, I'm not saying that none of them are doing that. I'm sure that there are physicians with poor bedside manner that inappropriately phrase the conversation, and that maybe needs to be looked at on an individual basis and making sure people have communication training on that. But I'm hesitant to say that that is the norm. And I would say it is important to have these conversations, even if they are unprompted, as part of the goals of care discussion.
And so it also looks like MAID is actually the repeal of blockers from receiving medical assisted death. So it looks like, from what I'm finding here, because I've actually researched this topic before and I used Canada as an example, it looks like in the past there were laws blocking you from being able to get any sort of medical assistance in death. It was illegal for them to allow you basically assisted suicide. And now it's the repeal versus Carter versus Canada of those blockers. So it's not necessarily that your doctor can just tell you, we don't want to help you anymore, we're going to just put you out. It's more, there's nothing now blocking you from receiving that assisted death, given that you meet certain parameters and mental health checks.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And Ben, you also are absolutely right. But I have read news articles. The most recent one was from Tuesday, which is the reason why I'm calling. This question has been on my mind all week. There's a woman in Vancouver who was told, we're sorry you have stage 4 cancer, but our medical service in Canada cannot help you. Would you consider medically assisted suicide? She didn't ask for it. She knew there were other options, but that's what happened.
Right. So again, this is a one-off thing. And number one, you're citing a news article, which is probably, like, we know that the news doesn't always correctly communicate what went down in the original encounter. And secondly, like, if this was the case that actually happened, like, sure, I would say, hey, that maybe that doctor needs some communication training and needs to think about how they phrased the conversation and how they had the goals of care discussion, which I'm all in favor of extra training, because it's a hard conversation to have. It's a very, very difficult space to be in with somebody. And so, sure, I think it's totally reasonable that somebody had a poor interaction, but I don't think necessarily that's reflective of the entire medical community surrounding this. And I don't necessarily think that one news article is accurately communicating the information. I would need more information from this encounter to make a judgment on whether or not this doctor's actions were appropriate.
And I think in that instance too, one, getting multiple opinions from multiple doctors would be important. And two, if they had euthanized her without her permission, that would still be illegal, I'm sure.
Like that would be a problem. But having the conversation without your consent is not a problem, because you need to have the conversation, because like this is the core of informed consent. Like if you give somebody options and you don't give them all of the alternative options, you are not allowing them to make appropriate informed consent, and you can be held liable for that. Because if somebody wanted an option, like, or would have wanted an option that they didn't know about, and you didn't tell them, and they picked a different option, like, and they came back and said, actually, I would have wanted this thing, but instead I went down this route and gave me these complications that I wouldn't have wanted, that's still falling back on you. So even if someone doesn't want to have that conversation necessarily, we have to have the goals of care conversation, and we have to give them all of the options.
Right. In the question of the source, I've actually went through about 6 different articles from 6 different newspapers, all very similar in context. She went to the doctor. The doctor said, "We're sorry, we can't help you. Would you consider it?" And she went to the news about it later on. And this has been going on since March of this year.
So I guess
from this Tuesday was updated.
So my question, I guess, is just so I can understand, is the problem that they offered her that option, or is the problem that she doesn't feel like they offered her enough options?
Both.
Okay. So at the point where maybe they feel they have done everything they can possibly do and there's nothing else they can do to help her, would you say that it's a problem they give her that option? Like, for example, if I were in her shoes and I knew that my options were bleak, that no matter what, there was going to be a lot of suffering and a lot of pain, I would want to know that at least the option, when my pain has gotten to the point where I no longer want to live with it, that the doctors will help me end my life. I don't think that that's a bad thing to offer her. It might be a bad thing to offer someone without telling them that there are alternative options for healing, but it sounds like her options were extending her pain and suffering, or giving her the ability to decide when that pain and suffering ends. If I'm understanding correctly, it sounds like she was terminal regardless, like she's terminal, and they can either continue to do operations and procedures and transfusions and things that aren't going to fix it, they're just going to prolong the situation, or they ask her, would you rather set your date? It doesn't sound like anybody was trying to poison her, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, you've hit the nail on the head with that. She did, in fact, fly to Baltimore and spent $200,000 on treatments. Which ones I don't recall. I'm not a medical professional. But she has spent the time, the money to go there and come back, and has spent $200,000 plus in Canadian. So that's and so far there has been no updates on her state of being.
Okay.
Mental or physical.
Yeah, and I mean,
personally, I'm for it. But I would like to ask a professional question of professionals such as yourself, Dr. Ben.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a sticky situation. It's a hard one. Like, no one wants to have the conversation of, do you want hospice or do you want like physician assisted suicide? And that's like, unfortunately a question that people have to face. And some people might want neither, and they might still try to spend money for treatments that are essentially futile. And that's their business. But I think, like, without context, I don't know much more of the situation of whether or not this particular doctor was inappropriate. He may well have been. They may well not have been, and I just don't know. But I think maybe there's a lot of information here that is just unknown at this point, so I can't really make a determination. So I hope this at least helped a little bit in the discussion. But I think we're gonna wrap up this call here. Unless you have any other thoughts.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time and I appreciate your input. And a quick shout out for last Sunday's Tom and Jimmy Jr. They are fantastic conversationalists. And thank you for the book. You Think You're Dead, or I believe it's called.
Yeah, thank you for calling in, and thank you for watching and appreciating the show. I'll pass on the kind words to the host of last week. They would love to hear about that. I hope you have a good... I hope you have a good rest of your Sunday, and I think maybe we'll read one more of the screenshots before we wrap up. But we will be going to the Discord after the show today for a few minutes. Sydney and I will both be there at tiny.cc/ACD Discord is where you can find the link to that. We will be answering questions, having a chat. But I think we will wrap up the show with one more of our fun comments. So this one says, unwanted pregnancy is not consent, spelled interestingly, by the infant to be murdered for the convenience of the parent. And this is problematic in a lot of different ways. Namely, I do not agree with their definition of abortion there. Abortion, again, is not murder. It is the ending of a pregnancy. And so, no, the fetus does not consent to termination of pregnancy, but also the parents do not consent to pregnancy. So, sorry, you have a conflict of consent at that point, and the medical science suggests supporting the person who is already alive versus one that is not yet alive. And you can have a termination and not have you can have a termination and still have a live fetus at the end of it. So these are not mutually exclusive. Any thoughts on that, Sydney?
And also, nobody consented to the conception at that point. So it's just a whole lot of non-consent. Like, nobody consented to being conceived. Nobody consented to the conception of the non-viable fetus at that point. And it's just a whole lot of non-consent. It's a big mess.
Huge mess of non-consent.
Yeah.
And with that, just a reminder of all the ways you can support the channel. You can click the like button below, share out this video, comment about your favorite host and your favorite calls. Even call into the show next week, as we will be here right at the same place, same time, doing the same thing. So get your calls in, join the Patreon, get your name on that list of top 5 patrons of the week. And also remember to put in the comments below the video your answer for the Talk Heathen to Me question. We know that God is not pro-life because ...
The Bible.
Because the Bible. And we'll see what all of your answers are next week. And if you're one of the top 3, we will see you on the air. And for our lovely guest today, Sydney Davis Jr.
Thank you.
Where can we find more of you?
Yeah, I've got a channel, Sydney Davis Jr. You can find me on Discord under Growing Up Fundy. You can follow my podcast here on YouTube, or wherever you're listening to this, on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, SydneyDavisJr.com. Anywhere that there is a platform to be had, I am Sydney Davis Jr. on that platform.
Awesome. Everyone should go follow Sydney. And I hope to see you around here a lot more in the future. And with that, once again, get your merch, get your selfies with your merch, get a brick at the library, and we'll see you in ACD Discord after this. And we're going to throw out some love rings to our lovely community here. Magic. If you don't believe this is your community, come hang out with us in Discord. We appreciate all of you being here, sticking with us every week, listening to the calls and calling in yourselves. If you do believe, we don't hate you. We're just not convinced. Bye, everyone.
We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live Friday at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/calltw.